where threats loom on the seas, in the skies, and in the ocean depths. The Enterprise's enemies could be anywhere and everywhere.
Get out, get out. Fuck me.
Now, follow this sea-bound band of brothers through 4 years of hell. From Pearl Harbor to the doorstep of Japan. You know, you did this to us. Watch this. Here we come now. There's nowhere to run when the war is all around you. Battle 360, USS Enterprise. Call to duty. This series is brought to you with limited commercials.
Normally, I tried to do this with Color Storm Squad, but
the Central Pacific.
Just too hard to do it without the Color Storm Squad.
Aircraft carrier USS Enterprise, with 2,800 men aboard, steamed through hostile waters of the Marshall Islands. War on the high seas has been raging for almost 2 months. Tensions on board run high.
So digging in now for Philadelphia, Scott Rowland.
2 miles off
Fastball for a strike. That's in there.
5 twin-engine Japanese bombers break out of the clouds and swoop toward Enterprise in a low glide. Their
And digging in
Mitsubishi
for Philadelphia,
G4Ms,
Richie Ashburn.
allied code name Daddy.
In the dirt, well done behind the dirt.
Enterprise's anti-aircraft guns greet the invader with a cloud.
One down, Phillies down a run. Just
With
missed.
the carrier
There
guns
goes the
dangling
runner.
away.
Swing and a
The
miss.
Japanese Betties are still
I
determined.
could have, but
132
I need strikeouts.
Run is now in scoring position. And that one ripped into right.
Just one hit could put this floating airfield out of commission.
Yeah,
And that's
I failed.
The Japanese planes opened their bomb bay doors and let the ordnance fly.
We failed twice. If we fail twice, we gotta give up. We gotta abandon.
But one is close enough to rock the Enterprise. Shrapnel rains down on the carrier's deck, mortally wounding one of her men. With their bomb bays
Fail
empty,
twice, we gotta
the
restart.
enemy planes bug out. Except the one in the rear. Although American gunfire has left her critically wounded, the last bomber does a 180-degree left turn and buzzes back toward the carrier.
He knew he was lost, and he was going down, so he's going to take some of us with him.
Enterprise
now a
Captain
screamer
George
into the
Murray orders
outfield.
instant
No
evasive
trouble
action.
here. Puts it away for the out.
Full
One down.
right rudder.
So up next, Derek Jeter.
As the ship
Two
attempts to
in
swing
this
to the
one.
right, out from under the bomber. The enemy plane dips
Swing
down
and a
just a
drive.
couple hundred feet
Deep
from
left
the water.
field. Holds it
What?
on the warning track.
Good. Fire. But
Here's
it was
Joey
coming
Dell.
on, it kept coming and coming.
Aviation machinist mate Bruno Peter Guido sees the impending disaster and scrambles into action.
This sailor
On the ground to
ran
third.
across the flight deck, jumped into a parked airplane, got on one of the machine guns from the plane.
And he took the guns up like this and he started shooting at him like this.
With the ship moving sideways, at the last moment, the suicidal enemy bomber charts a flight plan for maximum destruction. He banks sharply to the right on a collision course with the Enterprise. As the bomber crosses over the deck, its right wing shears off the tail section of Guido's plane. But the intrepid machinist's mate is unhurt and still firing as the enemy plane skids off the carrier deck.
And the gunner took the plane around, shot him the other time so it hit the ocean.
It is clear to his shipmates that Guido's heroics have saved the day. His quick action spared the carrier a devastating blow. The commanding officer of the aircraft carrier group, Rear Admiral William F. Halsey has watched the extraordinary shootout of the Enterprise bridge.
Figures.
10 minutes after that was over, Halsey called down and said, "Who was that guy?" Rear seat of that airplane fired at the attacking plane. And he said, "Send him up to the bridge." From Guido to description, he stood at attention, saluted the admiral and says, "What is your name?" And he said, "Bruno Guido." "What rate are you, Bruno?" "Aviation machinist mate third class." He said, "Bruno, you are now aviation machinist mate first class."
For Enterprise's sailors, it's just another day on the job. One of many close calls they and the most revered aircraft carrier in history will face over the coming 4 years.
So these guys on the Enterprise had a 60-degree view of the entire war. We've got a surface threat. We've got an air threat. We've got subsurface.
Dude, I am piecing this shit off.
Around you, above and below you, was their battle space.
A ship earns 1 battle star for every major battle she fights. By the end of the war in the Pacific, the Big E will earn 20 of them. 3 more than any other ship, and 7 more than any other carrier. And the nickname? Lucky.
A lot of people call the Enterprise the Lucky E, but I don't think she was so lucky as she was good.
The story of the Enterprise began 6 years earlier. Launched in 1936, USS Enterprise, alphanumeric designation CV-6, is a new breed aircraft carrier. Yorktown class, the supercarrier of its era. It's a sleek-hulled, medium-weight vessel, 108 feet wide, with a flight deck running across almost the full 809 feet of her length. Her deck is Washington State timber. Her hull, Pennsylvania steel. Displacing 25,000 tons when fully loaded. The Enterprise has a range of 12,000 miles, with a top speed of 32.5 knots. She's armed with 24 50 caliber machine guns, 4 quad 1.1-inch cannons, and 8 5-inch guns that can take out air or surface targets from a maximum distance of 18,200 yards. The Big E weighs more than 16,000 tons less than the older carriers in the fleet, but can carry the same number of warplanes into battle. She's more fuel efficient, more agile, more deadly.
The Enterprise had a spirit about it, indomitability. No other ship was going to compare with it.
The Enterprise can carry up to 96 aircraft.
It is an armed airport. You have all of those workshops and areas underneath the flight deck called the hangar,
Dude.
where they service the planes and where the planes are usually stowed. There are 3 elevators, and that's how those planes are brought up to the flight deck or taken below.
The carrier is the floating base for 1 squadron of TVT Devastator torpedo bombers, the slowest aircraft, which are typically held back until enemy surface ships have been spotted. 1 squadron of Grumman F-4F Wildcat fighter planes patrols near the ship, guarding it from air attack. And 2 squadrons of SBD Dauntless Scout bombers are routinely deployed to search 200 square mile sectors in all directions for an enemy presence. If the enemy is located, the SBD, with a 2-man crew and a max speed of 250 miles per hour, can win an air-to-air shootout with the 250 caliber machine guns in its nose and dual rear-mounted 30 caliber free-floating machine guns. It also has the capability of hitting enemy ships with 1,200 pounds of bombs. With its cadre convoy of warplanes, Enterprise is well equipped for battle with Japan. But none of the Big East pilots have ever fired a shot in anger. How will they respond when the Empire decides its first attack? War with Japan is imminent. While USS Enterprise is the supercarrier of her era, she won't be fighting alone. At sea, the carrier is like the quarterback of a football team. She's defended by cruisers and destroyers on the surface of the water around her. By scout planes, bombers, and fighter planes launched from her deck and patrol in the skies overhead. And sometimes, even by submarines beneath the waves out in front. The escort ships that sail closest to the carrier are the destroyers. A destroyer is a relatively small warship, typically with a displacement of about 2,200 tons, maybe some 400 feet, and a width. Like Enterprise, the destroyer's largest guns are her dual-purpose 5-inchers, capable of firing 5-inch projectiles at either surface or air targets. When taking on airplanes, these guns don't go for a direct hit. They send up a barrage of shells, known as flak, which are fused to explode at a specific altitude, hopefully taking out any aircraft that are approaching the fleet. The explosions send out blasts of shrapnel that leave behind those distinctive puffs of black smoke.
The destroyers were the last line of defense before the Japanese could get to the carriers.
Larger gunships, called cruisers, are typically more distant from the carrier to serve as her first line of defense.
Their primary mission is to protect that carrier at all costs. Everything else is secondary.
It was a team effort.
U.S. submarines also occasionally lend the carrier a hand.
They're the eyes and the ears of that whole fleet. They can virtually be undetected. They're great for reconnaissance.
And they can sink ships before they even know that they're there.
But Enterprise is the heartbeat of the task force. It takes thousands of men to keep this floating secret on the move.
Clerks, yeomen, cooks, men in the anti-aircraft divisions, radar men, radio men, signal men, different types of technicians. The ship typically has a Marines attachment, and their job is security for the ship, and they generally have battle stations. There are a lot of people on an aircraft carrier. All of them are doing different jobs.
The average age aboard ship is 19 years old, and these young men have come from all across the country to serve on this massive melting pot. The decks echo with the accents of the Deep South and the Midwest. Ranch hands from Texas bunking with street
So the
toughs from
go-ahead
Hell's
run in
Kitchen.
scoring position.
Guys from
Here's
Pennsylvania,
Joe Adele.
Alabama,
You gotta
California,
feel like there's a pretty good chance this game is going to turn on one
For
swing.
many of these American boys, life aboard this mega ship takes some
Here at the
getting
top
used
of the
to.
ninth.
I grew up in Round Rock.
Swing and a miss. And it's 0-2. He's falling behind in a huge spot where you've got to do what it takes to come through. Maybe choke up on the bat a little bit, spread out those feet, whatever it takes.
The Enterprise was the biggest ship I'd ever seen in my life. In fact, when I walked up the gangplank for the first time, I was imagining, golly, that must be so on a ship.
In 1941, the crew was still a largely unproven group of sailors, Marines.
Foul ball still 0-2.
How they would respond in the heat of battle
tie him up,
was
get the ball
anybody's
in
guess.
on the plate so that he can't get the barrel to it and hit it to the outfield.
Being afraid carries a
Just
lot
missing
of
there.
baggage with it.
Now 1-2.
I was never
See if you can
so
go
afraid
upstairs a
that I
little
wouldn't
bit.
be
Make sure
able to
you
carry
miss up and
all my
out of the zone since you're heading to count 1-2.
100%.
Don't miss in the zone
Because
because
I,
that's
like
where you get
everybody
hurt.
else aboard that ship, was determined we were not ever going to let our shipmates down. I think that one thing there
Swing, through it, and makes a strikeout.
what the
Big at bat
circumstances
coming
were.
up with Christian Yelich stepping in. Swings and chases a low one there.
Good late sink on that
Toughness starts
fastball.
at the
Out of
top.
the hand looks so good, and then by the time it
The
gets in the hitting
Enterprise's
zone,
task
hard to get
force
the barrel
is
to
run
it.
by the toughest admiral in the Pacific,
The go-ahead run is at second.
William F. Bull Halsey.
Out to short, boots it. Bellinger is in to score, and they tied it in the
Halsey's
top of the
fearless
ninth.
and disciplined. And most importantly, he's a scrapper.
Bull Halsey was a man of great personal will, a firm commander, a man that wanted to be in the middle of the action, in the thick of the combat.
He was a fight again. I have seen him many times on the bridge when we were under dive-bombing attacks, shaking his fist and cussing those Japanese dive bombers. And he was out there. He'd have a helmet on, but that was about all.
His men immediately respect him. And over the next several months, they will come to love him too. In the fall of 1941, Halsey and the other American commanders have a wary eye on Japan. The Japanese have made several threatening moves in recent years, invading China and allying themselves with Germany and Italy to form the original Axis of Evil. The Empire of the Sun is anxious to expand its territories across Asia. The U.S. and her allies are determined to stop them. Attempts to negotiate with Japan have floundered, and American intelligence has intercepted ominous messages hinting at war. By November 27, 1941, talks with Japan had ceased. The following day, Admiral Halsey approved the issuance of a special order. Battle Order Number 1. Bill Norberg, a yeoman or clerk aboard the Enterprise, recalls some of the inspiring language from the order.
The things that I recall most clearly are the Enterprise is now operating under wartime conditions. Steady nerves and stout hearts are needed.
Steady nerves and stout hearts, indeed. December 6, 1941. Enterprise is 300 miles from Pearl Harbor. Lucky for Enterprise and her task force, Mother Nature has other ideas.
We ran into a terrific storm. And we fairly well weathered that in a pretty good sized ship that we had. our little tin can destroyers were bouncing about like baubles on the water. They used up so much of their fuel that we had to slow down and stop and refuel them.
This twist of fortune will actually keep Enterprise and their task force from the far worse fate awaiting the ships docked at Pearl Harbor. Despite the storm, Enterprise still manages to launch 18 scout bomber planes on a routine reconnaissance mission on the morning of December 7th. But this morning will be anything but routine. 200 miles to the east. 353 Japanese warplanes are headed for a date with infamy. Enterprise crewman Sergeant Frank Graves has been temporarily assigned to a post on dry land. He's at machine gun school near the entrance of Pearl Harbor. History is about to happen, and he's got a front row seat.
I heard some strange engine sounds. I looked up, and right above the algaroba trees, probably not more than 75 feet in the air, were large Japanese three-seater torpedo bombers with a torpedo hanging on them, single file, one behind the other. And I started yelling Japs. Finally, I guess one guy decided to have some fun, and he opened fire on us. Hit the guy next to me.
Although Enterprise herself is not in the thick of the battle, Pearl Harbor provides a preview of the fearsome firepower the ship will soon be facing. In addition to
Can you guys not get a punt down?
the Japanese air arsenal includes the V5N2 torpedo bomber, nicknamed Kate, with a top speed of 235 miles per hour and a crew of 3. The plane doubles as a high-altitude bomber. The aircraft proved to be the most deadly, sinking more Allied warships than any other in the Pacific War, is the D-3A-1 dive bomber, nicknamed Val. With a 2-man crew and a max speed of 240 miles per hour, the Val is capable of carrying one 550-pound bomb and two 130-pound bombs.
You can see the dive bombers working over Pearl Harbor. Later on, some high-level bombers came in Pearl Harbor, and I suspect that's the one to get to Arizona.
More than 100 miles out to sea, Enterprise receives word that something is happening in the harbor.
Something came over the radio. Pearl Harbor under attack. This is no drill.
When Admiral Halsey gets the news, he has just finished breakfast and poured his second cup of coffee. Halsey, the men around him, and the Enterprise herself are suddenly electrified.
We were pretty much aghast. It just seemed surreal that we could actually be at war right that minute after we'd been at peace just a minute or so before. I think many of us grew up that morning.
Beyond the horizon to the east, the men of Enterprise's Scouting Squadron 6 approach Pearl Harbor and begin to notice that something is very wrong.
We could see the smoke billowing up from the island. And I said to the pilot, what the hell is the Army doing holding maneuvers on a Sunday?
Come on.
The true state of affairs is about to become very clear. The squadron's radios crackle with a frantic call from one of the pilots.
That's a double play.
Now he had that squeaky little voice. You couldn't miss him. For sake, shoot that son of on our tail. He's real bullets.
As Dickinson roars into the fight at Pearl.
Is it bad I need a Red Sox player to fucking hit a bomb here?
His rear seat gunner opens fire and downs one of the attackers.
Thank you, Xander.
But finally, Dickinson's plane succumbs to the barrage of enemy bullets.
He didn't die. His gunner was killed. But he parachuted and he made it back and got to fly another plane just right away.
Dickinson may have survived, but the first tangle of the enemy has been devastating. 6 of the 18 planes Enterprise launched that morning are lost. And for 11 of her airmen, the first battle of the war will also be their last. USS Enterprise finally steams into its home port on the evening of December 8th, roughly 32 hours after the attack.
The ships were on fire. There was smoke everywhere. There was oil all over the water. I don't recall seeing any bodies floating around, thank goodness, but it was a nasty mess. It looked bad, it smelled bad. You could almost feel gloom and doom in the air.
I just need Roland to do something here.
Trying to put out the fires. The surface of Pearl Harbor was about maybe 3-4 inches deep. Fuel oil.
Surveying the destruction, Admiral Halsey swears that when he's done, the Japanese language will only be spoken in hell. Halsey orders every able body on the ship, officer and enlisted alike, to help refuel and reprovision Enterprise as quickly as possible. It's a job that normally takes a full day of round-the-clock work. On this day, the men get it done in 7 hours.
The USS Enterprise can roll into Pearl Harbor, see all that carnage, then do what they need to do. Within 7 hours, turn right back around and get back out to sea. Most people would think that would be pretty amazing. I just think that it just shows the American spirit. That, you know what, okay, you did this to us, watch this. Here we come now.
The sneak attack on Pearl has crippled the
Fucking
American
disgusting.
Pacific Fleet. 4 cruisers, 5 destroyers, and 4 auxiliary ships have been damaged or destroyed. None of the fleet's 8 battleships have been spared. 4 are sunk, and the rest have taken heavy damage. But by striking when none of the 7 U.S. aircraft carriers were in port, the Japanese made a critical
I
mistake.
need a hit.
And they know it.
You need a hit from Bellinger right here.
Starting now, Enterprise and her fellow carriers are at the top of the enemy hit list. Of course,
And we fucking fail.
Because first of all, they're taking out warships. Then they're taking out airplanes. And they're taking out personnel all at the same time. So they're killing 3 birds with 1 stone. They believe if they could knock out all of our carriers, that they could win this war hands down.
We knew that we were an awfully big target.
Enterprise sails out of Pearl on Tuesday morning into a strange new world, where the threat of death looms just over the horizon.
I suspect every one of us probably had in our mind, why did this have to happen? But now that it has, what are we going to do about it?
When we went back to sea on Tuesday morning, for all we knew, we were right into the jaws of the Imperial battle fleet. So we were a bunch of scared
Ready
sailors.
to go for the last half of the inning. Here's Francisco Lindor.
Understandably, tensions are high aboard Enterprise.
Well, here's a
within
game
her
Lindor
task
will never
force.
forget. One night in July
Fear
of
of enemy
2023, he went
submarines is
5 for 5 with a
All
home
eyes
run,
are open
2
for them.
triples, and he scored 3 runs.
That stat line is so rare. Only one other player has done it. Guess who? Willie Mays in 1958.
Dropped a few depth charges around. This thing kept bobbing up.
Swing and a ground ball.
And they finally got it posted up.
Zips it to first. One up, one down. Jeff McNeil stands in. A little up front there as he swings through it. Between his size and his fastball, Bob Gibson probably was considered one of the most intimidating pitchers of all time.
Depth charges and ammo was wasted on that mob.
Got him looking. Called strike 3 and a fastball up in the zone.
But the deep waters near Hawaii
and
do
first offering is fouled off.
Yeah, just his demeanor out there on the mound. It was all business and didn't talk, fraternize with the other team, and was ready to take care of business, do his job every day he was on the mound. Seemed like if you take a big swing off of Gibson, you better make contact, because if you swing and miss, the next one's probably coming up near the shoulder.
Spots enemy submarines at the surface.
Cut on and miss, and it's a strikeout.
Submarines have to come up for air at least once every 24 hours in order to run the diesel engines that recharge their batteries. This morning, Japanese submarine I-70 is in Perry Teft's sights. Time for some revenge. The American pilot swoops in and drops a 1,000-pound bomb.
Hey, great roll there, kid.
The explosion rocks the Japanese submarine, damaging it and preventing it from diving beneath the surface. Sometime later, fellow Enterprise scout pilot Clarence Dickinson, the man who parachuted from his damaged plane, takes another dangerous dive on I-70.
Luzardo back to work. On the ground. Off balance feet.
Don was pilot's
There's one, and they get him easily at first. It's a double play. 2 down, bases empty. Ryan Dozier getting ready to hit. That misses the zone.
To ensure the element of surprise,
they can't play around with him here. It's a 6-run lead. At this point, got to attack hitters, even if you give up a solo shot.
70-degree dive angle on a World War II dive bomber. It's pretty dynamic.
1-1.
Your face is pointing at the ground. Hold you up by your feet.
And there's a ball.
Maybe just a little bit and push forward. That's 70 degrees. Now, we don't have to dive at 70-degree angles today because technology has allowed us to do much less dynamic.
Tosses to first. And that is
plunges down towards the sub and finishes the job.
How many are we gonna?
It's the first enemy ship
what's the percent we're gonna fucking get?
That the kill belongs to USS Enterprise.
USS Enterprise, to get the first naval kill, had to lift his spirits not only of just the ship's crew itself, but all the Americans.
Here's the first baseman,
So,
Jim
we're
Thome.
not done. We're not even close to being done.
Enterprise carries on with its patrol duties in the waters near Hawaii until late
In the
January.
air, center field. Williams under it.
Dry as a light. The ship has no luck.
Drops into the glove. Both brothers tagging. In to score is the runner from third. He's in there.
Distant waters.
2 outs. Runner on first. So up next for Chicago, Jim Thome drove in a run with a sac fly his first time out. And swinging to miss.
The 2-hole hitter showing so much versatility, understanding the situation, gets on base with 2 out to bring possibly the best hitters in this lineup up to the plate in this inning.
Landing on aircraft carrier is always difficult to maneuver. Eventually,
This hitter's looking for a
point where
fastball,
you
but
can actually
I'm not sure
enjoy
he's
day
gonna get
landings.
one. Pitcher doesn't have to challenge him. He feels better about his off.
Oh, now this one's blasted deep.
From the time of the very first carriers, the Navy set out to document any aviation mishaps, so that when mistakes are made, other pilots on board and across the entire fleet can learn from them. James Barnhill, the ship's bugler, is also a skilled photographer. One of his jobs is to film these death-defying takeoffs and landings.
I saw so many that would bounce and go inside or came into one side of the flat thing or the other and go into the catwalk.
In Wrigley Field, ready now for the 5th inning. And here is Jimmy Rollins. And that one is lifted in the air. Tucker makes the grab, 1 down. Now the number 2 hitter, Chase Utley. A swing and a miss, and that's strike 1. It's 0-1. Fouled off to the right.
The pilots know that if they see the cameramen stand up and start
good eye in that spot,
it means they're probably heading for a rough landing.
Get on the ground to short.
Vultures waiting to snap pictures of the crash.
Fires across
Back
the
today,
diamond,
the pilots would call that area the Vultures nest.
2 outs, base is empty. Ryan Howard, the next to hit.
Now you only have a space of landing that is 400 feet long. You have 6 wires
got the
out
back
there.
going too soon. It's strike 2.
On one of those wires. Of course, you don't want to land on number 6.
Drilled in the air, high.
I've only landed on modern aircraft carriers where we have 4 wires.
That's
I tell you, when you miss the 3, headed to the 4th, you get pretty close to the end of the carrier. You always know when you caught a 4-wire. Now, with the 6 wires that they had back in World War II time frame, I imagine it was pretty simple. You knew when you caught the late wires. But really, in pilot terms, we don't care what wire we catch, as long as we catch wire.
February 1st, 1942. The days of training and patrolling are over. Time to take the fight to the enemy. Target, Wochi Island, Central Pacific, and the Marshall Islands chain. Objective, deny the Japanese a base for possible invasion of the Hawaiian Islands. Strategy, destroy Japanese airstrips, fuel storage tanks, ammunition dumps, and anti-aircraft batteries. Enterprise's task force cruiser USS
dangerous hitter coming up to hit in Xander Bogaerts.
Her 8-inch guns hurled 260-pound projectiles 5
Swing and
miles
a ball
across
lifted
the sea
in the air,
to
shallow right field. Puts it away for the eye.
Closing to within 3.5 miles, Northampton can now use her smaller 5-inch guns to assault the shore batteries.
As a pitcher, you know the runner on second is ready to push things with his speed. A base hit's probably going to be a big run, so you really have to execute on the mound.
Instead of hitting the shore batteries with direct hits, the shells are exploding over the shore batteries. We're showering those positions with shrapnel.
USS Northampton is 600 feet long, 66 feet wide, and displaces 9,000 tons. She has a top speed of 32.5 knots. 9 8-inch
Swing
guns.
and a ground ball, and that one gets through into center field.
8 50-caliber machine guns.
Yelich crosses the plate, and it's an RBI single tie game here in the 8th.
The island of Wochi is experiencing that force this morning. 100 miles west of Wochi, surveillance has revealed a heavy concentration of enemy vessels in Kwajalein Atoll. So while Northampton takes care of Wochi, Enterprise sends its SBD bombers to strike the Kwajalein anchorage.
The hard-throwing righty trying to secure these
Dusty
outs
Creek
against
speeds
a
south
potent
toward an
Yankee lineup,
outpost
and
on
it starts
tiny
with Aaron
Kwajalein
Judge.
Island.
Swings and misses. And the count is 0-2.
I found the cruiser there.
Ripped into left
So
center
no
for a
liners
base
are out.
hit. Runner from third
boy.
comes across.
This is great.
It's an
So I got up
RBI
there and I
single,
made this
and it's
dive.
6-5. Now Jazz Chisholm Jr. steps up for a big at bat. Now he breaks as bad as it's put in play. Fire to second, not in time to first. It's a fielder's choice. He's 2 outs away. And now the center fielder, Ernie Williams.
Just amazing to me how many closers and back-end relievers just throw absolute gas these days. I never would have had a chance.
There's a lot of factors that come into
Well, he knows they don't want to give him anything to hit.
And a swing and a miss.
Huge strikeout there.
Clearly, the longer you wait to
O'Neal
release the
in the
bomb,
box
the
now.
closer
Takes
the
strike
target
one.
will be, the less all those factors can influence
It's
the bomb's
in and out of his
trajectory.
glove.
So, in that respect,
They
waiting
put
is better.
the tag on him, and
You also got
that'll
to be able
do
to
it.
pull out
Ball
that dive
game.
bomb. And you also want to release the munition so that when it explodes, you're not caught in the frag pattern. So back then, typically released bomb between 1,000 and 2,000 feet.
That's
The
what I
longer you
call
wait,
a
the more accurate
critical
it's going to be.
success.
But also, the
Fresh
faster you're
perks.
going to be pulling
Get your
out, the
fresh
lower you're going
perks
to be pulling
here.
out. So it's kind of there's a happy medium in there somewhere.
As he dives down toward the Japanese cruiser, Cleese has just one bomb aboard, a 500-pounder.
He knew he had one shot only. Everything had to be perfect.
And remember, no refunds. Eat the peanuts immediately.
I vomited.
As he pulls out of his dive, Cleese is feeling pressure 5 to 6 times the force of gravity. But there's no better
Now
feeling
here's
than
big
getting
center
right
fielder
in the
Luis
enemy's
Robert.
face and delivering a knockout blow.
That one in triple digits. Well, comfortable or not, these are the situations closers they seem to live for. When you get into some hot water or jams, and La Pantera heads back to the dugout after the K. Teal in the box now, takes strike one.
He scores a well-timed hit on a tankless rail.
How are you supposed to do this?
And they tied it in the
You
bottom
really
of the
can't get a fucking 3-out save with a runner on third.
Scoring position with one
Trying
gone.
to go out at sea, and he hit it right
I
on
gotta
the
take
head.
fucking
Started on fire.
Kimbrel out my fucking lineup.
The tanker just happens to be at the choke point of the channel, and it blocks passage by the remaining ships.
Well, here were all these ships inside of the lagoon.
Then the USS Enterprise launched 9 torpedo planes after it to go get those remaining ships that were caught inside the channel.
Practically no anti-aircraft gun, and here these things couldn't move. Well, it was like shooting fish in the barrel.
The torpedo bombers sent by Enterprise are Douglas TBD Devastators, slow, antiquated aircraft that will soon be replaced by more agile planes. With a sluggish maximum speed of 207 miles per hour and a feeble rate of climb of just 720 feet per minute, TBDs are overly vulnerable to both enemy fighters and anti-aircraft fire. They carry a single 2,200-pound Mark 13 torpedo. The Enterprise TBDs pass over Kwajalein Lagoon and drop their payloads without a single explosion. At this point in the war, American torpedo technology is hit or miss, and it's mostly miss. 9 out of every 10 torpedoes veers off course or fails to detonate. It's a frustrating reality for the pilots risking their lives at Kwajalein.
Monster torpedoes, not one hit.
Luckily, there are American bombers in the area too, and their
Steve
explosives
Finley
are working
stands
just
in
fine.
now for the Diamondbacks.
Kwajalein Harbor is a
And a
slowly
strike
burning
right through
wreck
there.
by the time
That one
Admiral
at
Halsey
triple
calls off
digits.
attack.
Swing and a miss. That's strike two.
Some 90 enemy personnel were
Got
killed
him.
in Kwajalein,
And that is a big first out.
including the area
Marte
commander.
in the box now. Takes strike one. A big swing and a miss. Well, all eyes on the double play ball in this.
The Marshall
Strike
Islands
three, and
raids are a
that's 2 in a
huge
row.
success. And Enterprise returns to a
Green in the
hero's
box
welcome
now.
at Pearl
Takes
Harbor.
strike one. Swing and a miss, and that's strike two. This could end it. Got him, and that's the ball game.
Waving towels. I remember some of the Army people holding their rifles up. And I even remember one guy holding them up. He was shaking that back and forth. They were so elated that somebody had whacked the enemy good and proper. And of course, our sailors were manned flight deck by the hundreds. They were looking pretty spiffy up there. And as we passed the Nevada, those guys hollered out in unison,
Hip, hip, hooray. Hip, hip, hooray.
Here's Brandon Nimmo.
Responded. Just unbelievably exhilarating. Hip, hip, hooray.
Irvin
hip,
back
hooray.
to work.
That sounds kind of sophomoric at a time like this when you look back on it. But at that time, it's just exactly what we needed.
Line drive, caught. Here comes the throw.
The sailors of Airman Enterprise will soon get yet another small taste of sleep.
As we go to the last of the third, here's the center fielder, Brandon Nimmo.
Sailors on the deck of USS Enterprise notice the air.
Swing and a line drive ripped out into left center field. That'll touchdown for a hit.
They've been operating in the steamy South
second
Seas
easily with a lead-off double.
and now the brisk weather is making it very obvious that they're sailing north. But only the Admiral seems to know why. Tension aboard Enterprise is still high. At any moment, the calming sounds of the sea could be interrupted by the whine of a Japanese Zero or a torpedo broadsiding a ship.
Steal 2 bases? Oh, hell.
Up on the bridge, Captain's Yeoman Bill Norberg is working an all-nighter.
I was working my shift.
Derek
on
Jeter
the bridge
will hit next.
It was at 12 to 4 o'clock in the morning.
Runner on the goal. Pitch
And I was
misses.
up wing of the bridge.
Safe at
And out
second,
there,
and
it
he
just so
easily
happened the general quarters buzzer
steals the
was
bag.
out there. And I kind of nodded off in my head, was leaning back, hit that buzzer.
And they put the
What the fuck?
And of course, that means everybody jump out of your sacks when you go down to the battle station.
delivers
Around the ship,
outside.
the crew jumps into action. Men roll out of bunks and grab for helmets. Crews ready their guns.
Next off, when he's through for a strike.
Nasty 2-0 slider there
But
for
the
a
skies
strike.
remain
That tells
quiet.
you he's got a lot of confidence
Soon
in that
word
pitch.
spreads that this is a false alarm. And
Right
everyone
through there
aboard
for a
ship
strike.
wants to know who triggered it.
And I heard somebody say, I don't know who it was, but he had a pea coat on. That was me.
Drilled out towards left center field. That's well struck. That's back there.
You know, sleeping on duty.
This one over the bleachers, and it finds the concourse. Look out. One out, base is empty. And now the center
At
fielder,
roughly
Joe
6 a.m.
Adele.
on the morning of April 12th,
On the ground to
men
the
of
left.
the Big E
And that's
and her task
just
force notice a
foul.
completely
Part of the
unexpected
order coming
sight in
through
the
now,
distance.
and with one home run already in this inning, they're definitely looking to do some more damage.
Out there to center. And that one actually will
And I
be grabbed
looked over
by
there, I
Story
couldn't
to
believe my eyes.
Now it's
The
Christian
surprise
Yelich.
vessel is friendly. It's their sister carrier, USS Hornet. But she's carrying mysterious cargo.
Hammered on a line to the left.
Something
base
wrong
hit.
with Hornet's
And that
silhouette.
extends the inning.
What was wrong with it is the flight deck was half covered with these big, strange-looking airplanes.
Here's Bogarts
They were
now.
not painted Navy colors, and they weren't naval aircraft. They finally
Yelich
figured out
goes.
they
Strike in
B-25
there.
and Army
Throw to
camouflage.
second. Great jump. And that is a stolen base. It wasn't even close.
The Army B-25s are here to make a bombing run on the heart of Japan. Target: Tokyo and other industrial centers around Japan. Objective: take out factories and munitions plants and demoralize the enemy by assaulting their homeland. Strategy: attack with 16 B-25 bombers launched from USS Hornet.
Lady Luck is definitely in your
I don't
corner.
like to use the word revenge, but sure. I mean, there was some revenge that they wanted to get some back. You know, they were mad, and they weren't stand for it then. We don't stand for it now. You know, you reach out and you hurt us, we're coming after you. And you know what? There ain't a damn thing you can do about it.
Runner in scoring position. No outs. Here's Yelich at the
daring mission.
He's 0 for 1.
And he's chosen the
Back
B-25
to work.
as the aircraft
Ball
on which
one
to
there.
trust his
Well, he
life.
hasn't quite settled in out there. 4 runs
North
in
American
3
Mitchell
innings.
B-25
He's going to have some
is a
quick
twin-engine
1, 2,
medium
3
bomber
innings to
with a
pitch
range,
deep into this ball game.
depending on bomb load, of about 1,300
Hard hit right
miles.
side. That's the first out
It's
in the
typically
top of the
manned
fourth.
by a crew of 5 and can deliver up to 5 5,000
And
pounds
here
long.
is Xander Bogaerts.
While other bombers have more range and power,
this one.
B-25's modest wingspan of 67 feet 7 inches will allow USS Hornet to fit more bombers on its flight deck. The plan is for the carrier to get Doolittle's bombers within striking distance of Japan.
Laser, base hit, in to score from third. And it's an RBI
Chinese territory.
5-4 now as they take the lead.
Since Hornet's normal defensive aircraft must be stored below deck to make room for the Mitchells, Enterprise and her task force will go along to protect the Hornet if she's attacked.
Yeah.
Second, throw to first.
This is a suicide mission.
I know why she's fucking sent her kid to come home from school. You're fine. You're fine. There ain't no room around that side for you. Hey, there ain't no room on that side for you. Come on. Come on. Yeah, you're just a big baby. Yeah, you're a big baby. Yes, you are. You're just a big baby. Yes, you are. You're my big baby too. Yes. What are we gonna do with you, huh? What am I gonna do with you, huh? Let me teach you whatever you want, huh? You do whatever you want, huh? Yes, you do. Alright, so. Alright. See? See? Take it to spot. Come on. Alright, I'll leave it in to go to the bathroom. I have the dog. No, there was no kids outside. She couldn't reach her ball. No, she threw it out of the rain. She couldn't reach her ball. What are you doing? Playing in the bag? Yeah.
Digging in, Ryan Dozier.
Just barely beat it out.
To reach the designated landing area in China, Hornet and Enterprise need to get the planes within 400 miles of the Japanese mainland. But bad luck intervenes.
We ran across
Next
this
one
little,
is off the
what we thought was a
and
fishing
now it's
boat.
even 1-1.
Turned out to be a patrol boat. We didn't pick it up on our surface radar. It was that small.
That one missed.
Cruiser Nashville went out with our 6-inch battery and sank this thing. And we thought we got away with it.
And there's a rocket into the outfield.
Actually intercepted a message reporting
Off to the second, in there safely.
So they had to launch, and they had to launch right then and there. There was no turning back.
The carriers are 650 miles from the Japanese mainland.
That
It means
was
Doolittle and his
close.
men might not have the fuel to make it out safely.
That was close. I don't recommend.
They choose to go anyway. At 8:20 a.m.
Alright, so
blustery morning of April 18th, 1942, the B-25 Mitchell bombers prepare for takeoff.
we play on Hall of Fame. It's a 62%. We can get Whitey Ford.
30 knots, pitching and bucking like a bronco, about 25 knots headwind. Wind on the flight deck of the carrier's 55 knots.
The pilots have more to worry about than the weather. Carriers like Enterprise and Hornet weren't designed to launch planes this heavy. And this is the first time a B-25 has attempted to take off from a carrier in combat.
That aircraft wasn't designed to be taken off an aircraft carrier, so they really had to get as much wind over the deck as possible because wind over the deck translates to flying speed off the angle.
Once the bombers are speeding down the flight deck, there's only two places they can end up. With enough speed, they'll be in the sky. Too slow, they'll be in the sea.
Taking off in a high wind, high sea environment is always tricky. Your number one priority right there is to be making sure that the aircraft is lifting off the end of the deck. The bow is high.
Just about set to go now.
Making it even more
Starting on the mound in this one,
bombers have been
Mike
stripped of
Messina.
all non-essential
When it
items
comes
to
to
make
hitters in
room
the
for more
5-inch
fuel
lift,
and
so for
bombs.
him, it's always interesting to see how he utilizes those weapons. He may lean on 1 or 2 pitches depending on how things are
Doolittle
going and how
himself
things
is
are
the first
working.
to go.
But if he can control 4 or even 5 of those offerings, look out, hitters. It's going to be a tough day. He's really going to be able to keep those guys off balance. O'Neal falls
Doolittle's
in
bomber
and
struggles
away.
off the deck.
Derek Jeter
Manages to
getting
stay
ready to
airborne.
hit. Outfield deep here, trying to prevent anything over their heads. Edge of the zone for a strike.
Ready? Jump. 1. Ready? 1.
There was one more.
2. Ready? 1, 2.
All 16 of them got on the way.
Hours after launch, bombers finally reach their targets.
Swing and a miss, and he chases that one in the dirt. Gets the out, 2 down after the strikeout. Here's Joe Adele. Just not a good pitch to swing at. One reason he's an everyday player is he usually lays off of that jump.
They then turn
That
for the
one
Chinese
hammer,
coast,
but
their
pulled
designated
foul.
landing area. But as the last drops of fuel funnel through the bomber's tanks, most of Doolittle's air crews have no choice
Just
but to
couldn't
bail
keep it
out
fair.
and crash landing.
Base hit center field. And that means Christian
3 crewmen
Yelich will have a
perish in the
chance to
process.
hit.
8
Now it's
are
Christian
captured by the
Yelich.
Japanese.
Star.
MVP in 2018, the runner-up in
The physical
2019.
damage done to Japan has been negligible. Impact is truly significant on both sides of the Pacific.
It was definitely a morale booster, not only for our service.
Comes up empty. That's strike 2. He's trying to stay away from his lefty, knowing that
enemy
a lot of left-handers like the ball down and in.
It makes you feel like, you know what? You tried to stop us.
Ground
They
ball
have-
up the middle.
We're coming after you.
Chisholm handles.
To show the Japanese that they weren't invincible. That we can reach out and we can touch it.
Back here in New York, And now the right fielder, Aaron Judge.
The first
That
6 months
pitch gets the
before
inside
trial
corner.
by
And
fire.
that's strike one.
Judge enjoyed success at the major league level right away. He hit
December
52 home runs as a
1941.
rookie,
The men
breaking
of
Mark
the Big
McGwire's
East were
record
sailing
and
the
became the
Pacific,
first Yankee to
unsure
win
of what
Rookie
lay
of the
beyond
Year
the horizon.
since some guy named
Now,
Derek Jeter.
They are well on their way to become
Jazz Chisholm Jr.
battle-tested
Batted with
fighting
one
machine.
down, takes a strike.
Morale on board runs high.
One out, bases
We
empty.
didn't look for the war to last very long.
Just off
We
the
didn't
outside
think
corner.
the
And it's 1 and
Japanese
2.
were that strong.
That one the other way.
They thought that the war would
And
go
foul
relatively quick,
ball.
and they couldn't have been more wrong.
Swings and misses. It's a strikeout. Some high cheese for strike 3. Bernie Williams
Signal
stands in here,
pilots and
leaves that
gunners
one
from
off the
Enterprise
inside.
Task Force will come face to face with the
That
enemy.
misses the zone. 2-0. Ground ball to the right side. And that one finds its way through. And that keeps the inning going.
Showed some really nice patience in that at bat. Worked himself into a good count. He kind of rolled over on this pitch a little bit, but he got enough behind it to shoot a 3-4 knock. And we'll take that anytime you can get him to find a hole.
The aircraft
Just
carrier
missed.
Enterprise leads the U.S. Navy as it strikes back.
That one misses. And the count is 3-1. Swing and a
Now
miss. And he got
Enterprise
him
is
to
about to
chase.
face a massive Japanese fleet.
In the air, out towards right center.
USS
And
Enterprise,
that below the inning.
a fighting city of steel. She's the
Welcome
most
back, and we've
revered
got a
and
new arm on the
decorated
mound to
ship
start
of
the
World War
second.
II.
Jonathan Loisiger. And here comes Sander
On this
Bogarts.
360-degree battlefield where threats loom
Slash
On the
foul down the
seas.
right side.
in the skies and in the ocean depths. The Enterprise's enemies could be anywhere.
Rolled softly, but then pushed back.
There's nowhere to run when the war is all around you. Battle 360
Loisiger fires.
USS Enterprise.
Off the plate.
Vengeance
ball
at
one.
Midway. This series is brought to you with limited commercials by the men and women of
And a swing
Enterprise
and a miss.
Rent-A-Car.
Down on strikes. And that's the first out.
1942.
And here's the first baseman, Carlos Delgado.
Bombers from USS Enterprise find their target in the middle of the Pacific. They are Japanese
And he
carriers
swings through
Kaga
that
and Akagi,
They'll score here
part
in
of
the
an enormous
second.
Japanese fleet. Japanese Zero fighters have been distracted with earlier assaults. They tear apart the slower planes, but leave their home carriers unprotected. Perfect prey for the hunting dive bombers of Enterprise.
And 1 and 2.
26-year-old Dusty Cleese spots his target, carrier Kaga.
Everything was ideal. We were up about like 20,000 feet, and they were
That
coming.
one back up the middle, and it gets through.
Cleese begins his dive, but all 32 bombers in the squadron plunge at exactly the same time, nearly causing mid-air
When
collisions.
this game is over. Couldn't get any air under it, but he smoked that ball back up the middle. Timing was just perfect. Great wood on it, and there's just no chance for the infielders with how hard he hit it.
Popped up.
Chisholm throttle at the firewall just as hard as he could go. He could smell the water. He was just that close.
Devin
It
Williams
is payback for
takes
Pearl
over on the
Harbor,
mound.
and it may be
Not
doomed
many
before a
pitchers
single
batted,
bomb is
but he'll
dropped.
break out a screwball from time to time.
The overeager flyboys of
Swing and
Enterprise
a
are
ball
looking for
drilled in
vengeance.
the air towards right
They
center
are
field.
diving into a trap.
And that's the third out. Paul
Flashback.
O'Neill
The
digs
battle
in
called
now.
Midway had actually begun 24 hours before.
Back now and a new arm in the
On
mound
June
to start the
3rd,
bottom of the second.
1942,
Lake Triton.
USS Enterprise
And the
sails
first pitch
900
misses
miles
for
from her
ball
home
one.
base in Hawaii, accompanied by fellow carriers
Strike one.
Yorktown and
One ball,
She's
one
heading
strike.
for a tiny American
That
outpost on a
one
remote
finds the
atoll
zone,
called Midway.
and that's strike 2. That's a little bit low.
175 miles
That's
west,
a really
four
good take.
Japanese carriers steam southeastward on a collision course. Imperial Admiral
And a
Isoroku
pop-up on the
Yamamoto
left side
plans
of the
to finish the
infield.
job he started
Rolling
in Pearl
under
Harbor.
it. Makes the
USS
grab one away.
Enterprise is
what the Japanese really wanted to take out. Yamamoto knew that if he could take out here, they essentially was winning.
Far-off foul.
The main force of Japanese ships headed toward Midway include 4 aircraft
One
carriers.
down, base is empty.
Kaga,
Good job to fight that one off.
Soryu, and Hiryu. 7 battleships.
In there! Got him looking for the K.
Cruisers,
That was pretty
destroyers,
nasty.
and tankers.
Sliced hard,
248
but
carrier
foul down the
aircraft.
left side.
16 float planes, and some
Elio
15
won.
submarines.
This one chopped on the ground, but foul. But that's outside.
The American
and that's
Armada
ball
is
one.
substantially smaller.
Just
3
misses the
aircraft
mark
carriers,
outside the zone.
50 support ships. 233 carrier aircraft.
2 out, space is
127
empty.
land-based aircraft on Midway Island, and
Battling
8
here as he fouls it
submarines.
away.
Outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. 6 months after Pearl Harbor,
And
this is all that is left of America's Navy. The carriers were not present
Yankee
in the
Stadium
attack.
in the Bronx.
To Yamamoto's dismay.
Yes, Monty Grandal.
Said, we have no idea what we've done. He was definitely disappointed and worried.
This one in the air center field. Williams.
Sinking those American carriers really became an obsession
Pulls it
for
in for the
Yamamoto's as the months
Here's
after
Cody
Pearl Harbor
Bellinger.
continued.
Flying
Those
to
aircraft
left his
carriers come
first
back to
time.
make a bit of a pain in the neck of themselves by attacking the Japanese in February at the Marshall Islands.
3 weeks later, the USS Enterprise strikes the Japanese force occupying Wake Island. And a week after that, Enterprise strikes at Marcus Island, just 1,000
Now
miles
the
from Tokyo.
shortstop, Derek Jeter. 0 for 1 so far.
Then in April, Enterprise escorts USS Hornet into a raid against mainland Japan.
This is a spot where he's got to treat this as a clean inning. Forget about the home run. Forget about now being behind on the scoreboard.
Japanese realize the home island's vulnerable.
Back up to the plate as quickly as
U.S.
possible.
Navy aircraft carriers are still out there and are still dangerous. So what we need
Out
to
to
do
short,
is
Volpe.
get rid of their aircraft carriers
Throws the
and
first
then
in time.
set up one more outpost further out in the eastern
Fernando
Pacific.
Cruz gets the call
One
from the
carrier,
pen.
Lexington,
Pretty tight game,
has already
so
been
they're
sunk
looking
a
for
month
quality
ago.
pitches out of him right here. Got to do his best to keep the score right
Admiral
where it
Yamamoto
is.
plans to lure the rest of them into a trap.
As he takes ball one.
He'll target Midway Island.
Midway is close enough to Hawaii that it will be seen as a threat to the security of Oahu and Pearl Harbor, and yet it's far enough away that American air power in the Hawaiian
Here comes
Islands
the
can't
pitch.
really make its presence felt
So
during
a foul ball
the
makes it
forthcoming
1
battle.
and 2.
The American fleet has also lost one of its best leaders. Vice Admiral Ball Halsey has kept the Navy afloat for 6
Caught
months
and missed.
on nothing but sheer guts.
And the inning is over.
Now he is out of action.
Bottom of the
Fell
inning,
by a
there's the
rare variant
shortstop
of
out the
psoriasis.
play.
So
Anthony
severe
Volpe.
he's hospitalized. His very life threatened. Admiral Chester
And the first
Hughes is
offering a
still in
fastball
command
for a
of the
strike.
Pacific.
Swing and a miss. Chased it out of the zone.
Texas native and a 41-year veteran of the
It
Navy.
misses.
He's
It's
a
a
shrewd
strikeout.
and efficient commander.
Wade Boggs, the next to hit, takes ball
Though
one.
Nimitz is outnumbered and outgunned,
Yeah, that skips
he has
into
an
there.
ace.
Well, an interesting situation. One swing you can tie up the ball.
Japanese
If you're
code.
patient, you work a walk. When you bring the
U.S.
game-winning
Navy
run to
has
the
worked
plate.
around the clock
And there's
to
the
crack
automatic.
Imperial Navy's code.
Swings through the
They
fastball up in
determined
the
that the
zone.
Japanese plan an attack on a target called
Now he
AF.
breaks his bat.
But what is AF?
Tosses to first. Boggs
Washington
is out.
bureaucrats insist
So they're
AF
down to their
is
final
Alaska's
out.
Aleutian
Aaron
Islands,
Judge at
the
the plate.
beginning of an
Ball
assault
one
on
and a
the
pitch
U.S.
inside.
But
That's the
Admiral
third,
Nimitz
and
believes the
it's
Japanese
just
want the Pacific,
foul. That was
not
close.
Alaska.
That's hard hit on the
The
line.
Codebreakers come up with a ruse.
And
They
that'll
broadcast
do
a radio alert saying that Midway has a drastic water shortage. Within 24 hours, the Codebreakers have their answer. The Japanese Navy sends a coded message reporting a water emergency on target AF. Nimitz is right. AF is Midway Island.
A job
Admiral
well
Nimitz
done.
has evened up the odds. The Japanese Navy is arriving in full force. But the Americans will be waiting. For the U.S., it is a true 360-degree battle. Target, Midway Island. Objective, protect the American base and inflict as much damage as possible on the superior Japanese fleet. Strategy, ambush with air, sea, and sub attacks. Nimitz knows that the Japanese will approach Midway from the northwest. So he sends his aircraft carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, to a staging point 200 miles northeast of the island. When the Japanese carriers come within range, American bombers will attack. And all signs point to the 4th of June as the day the enemy ships will reach the battle zone. Dawn, June 4th, 1942. It's clear and quiet as USS Enterprise floats near the exact center of the Pacific. Scout planes search for the enemy carriers, but they are too late. Japanese bombers, Kates and Vals, get the first hit at Midway. Force of 109 Japanese aircraft
where it's not just about finding treasure.
They tear into
it's
the
about
American base,
finding a way to
exploding
keep
hangars and cratering runways. It is like Pearl Harbor.
Swing and a high fly ball, pretty well struck right field. That's back there. And that one's gone. The first batter of the game
Back with
leads
Enterprise and her task force. Sailors prepare for action, but haven't gotten word of the Midway attacks.
It's 1-0.
Over on USS Yorktown,
Jeter, now
21-year-old Oklahoma native Lloyd Childers, a radio man gunner, dressed alongside his brother Wade.
Home run in an inning kind of gets the offense fired up, and you start to expect a big inning.
Childers had an odd sense that his chances of surviving his mission today were slim.
In the air, right side, Montgomery on the move. He's got it. One away.
My brother was standing there. We were sharing that locker.
Got to put it into his highest
down in my pocket.
gear and go
Wrist
all the way
watch
to
and put
track
it in
that
the
one down.
locker. And I said,
Nothing better than that. You feel like a wide receiver playing football.
He got a funny
Swing and a high fly ball out towards right center field. Out number 2.
The morning's ominous tone gets worse when they reach the mess hall. It's a hearty meal of steak and eggs, a sign to the airmen that real trouble.
First offering is foul.
Lay down.
He gave up on that pitch early and ended up staying in the zone. I'm sure he's kicking himself and would like that pitch again.
Now, we always knew that anytime we ever had steak and eggs, that was going to be a busy day.
Try to go again at the fastball, slightly elevated. He just had a hard time catching up.
Yeah, that's down and away.
7 a.m. Reports of the attack on Midway reached the Enterprise.
Now
the flyers scramble to prepare for their launch. In Enterprise's ready room,
now it's going to be Andrew Benintendi.
Many for the last time.
That's in for a
The
strike.
ideal launch order is for the Wildcat fighters to climb into the sky first to protect the plane.
Swing and a miss as he was late.
Then the torpedo bombers launch, followed
This
by
one
the dive
smacked out to
bombers.
left center. And there's one down.
The dive
And now
bombers
it's
are
Luis
faster than
Robert.
the torpedo planes and can catch up.
And that's
But
in
it
for a
doesn't come
strike.
off like clockwork.
And it's 0-1.
Problems with plane jockeying on the flight deck caused delays.
That one to first, Delgado.
Some
And he
squadrons
handles
don't
it
properly
himself in
coordinate
the
and
out.
become scattered.
And here's the catcher, Kyle Teal.
Well, there's a lot riding on that at bat right there. Nice job of the pitcher to bear down, make the pitch, get the ground ball. Excellent piece of work.
So when the American
Comes up
carriers
empty.
finally begin launching their aircraft, they put them up in such a way that you have
Rip to third.
squadron-sized groups going off and doing their own
Whips it to
individual
first.
searches for the
3 up, 3
Japanese
down,
rather than
inning over.
putting together a coordinated strike with
Back at right
torpedo
field.
bombers,
And
dive
now
bombers, and
Xander
fighter
Bogaerts.
escorts.
SBT scout bomber
that
pilot
hit
Dusty
him.
Fleece
And
says
the
goodbye to
leadoff
his
man
friend
is aboard to
Tom
start the
Eversole.
inning. And now the
Eversole
first
pilots
baseman,
one of the
Carlos
slow,
Delgado.
torpedo
Got to be
bombers.
careful with a slugger
His
like
odds
this
returning from the
because he
battle
could
are
turn
low.
it into a 3-run game in the blink of an eye.
He knew that he was on a suicidal thing, you know.
The torpedo bomber aircraft the men are flying.
Liner.
The TBD Devastator is not a good
Going back
airplane
to
for
the
the
dugout
job.
after hitting the line drive that finds a glove, but you will get some high fives. You know, when you make great contact, you feel like you've done everything right. But in this game of baseball, not everything is in your control.
Torpedoes at very
Ryan
low
Dozier
altitude.
now at the
very low
plate as he
speed.
swings through strike one.
Over on Yorktown, radio man gunner Lloyd
That one
Childers
down the
climbs to
line,
the back of his
and it
torpedo
goes
bomber
just
with his
foul.
pilot Harry Coral up front.
strapped in and everything ready to go. I picked up the mic and I told Mr. Coral, today's my 21st birthday. Theoretically, today I'm a man. Let's celebrate.
Moments later, Coral and Childers' TBD Devastator, lugging a 2,000-pound torpedo, roars down the flight deck and fights its way into the air. They'll have to fly nearly 2 hours to reach the Japanese ships. While the torpedo planes lumber into the sky, American forces have already begun the assault on the Japanese. 7:10 a.m. The first wave of the American attack begins. Bombers have launched from Midway Island to attack the Japanese carriers. The enemy warships open up with anti-aircraft fire. A typical Japanese aircraft carrier is bristling with weaponry. The Kaga, an important carrier in this fight, wields 5 8-inch guns that can reach out more than 10 miles. For medium-range work, it has 16 120-millimeter batteries.
We head to the bottom of the second, and here's the first
22,
baseman,
25-millimeter cannons.
Well, a come-and-get-me fastball right there. He didn't look ready for the velocity. I think it'd be a mistake to throw anything off speed right
6
there.
miles southwest and just under the surface.
Swings through that
American
one.
submarine USS Nautilus scans the horizon. The sub is a scout for U.S. forces. Smoke from the Japanese anti-aircraft fire soon draws the attention of Nautilus. The sub moves closer, looking to make an attack of its own.
Swinging a foul back, and that's out of play.
But 180 degrees and some 800 feet overhead, the Japanese
ground
fighter
ball
plane spots
middle.
Nautilus. The Zero swoops down to 200 feet and opens up a machine gun fire. Anything to damage
Doing
the
a
sub
nice job
or
of
force it below
keeping the ball
periscope
out of the air.
depth, so it cannot fire a
Defense work
torpedo.
behind him with another ground ball. Good execution.
90 degrees and 2,000 yards off Nautilus's port bow. The Japanese destroyer Arashi spots the encounter.
He had some run and finished.
It charges in and starts dropping depth charges.
That's when I was if he swing at it. He had a broken
A depth
back.
charge is an explosive device designed to sink a submarine with a powerful underwater explosion. A fuse set will activate at a predetermined depth and detonates the explosive.
And a swing at it. Back here on the south side, out of the third inning. Yasmani's ground
Now
down
the
up
hunt
to
is
him.
on. With a speed of 35 knots and armed with 8 torpedo tubes and 26 depth charges, Arashi is a sub-killer. Depth charges don't have to be direct hits. The explosions are designed to rupture or crack the sub's hull. Even a minor crack can compromise the sub's safety.
0-2 fastball way out of the zone. I think he's trying to speed him up. Got to stay back. Off speed's probably coming.
Hacks and misses. It's a strikeout.
The explosions
One
miss
down,
Nautilus,
here comes Cody
but the sub
Bellinger.
takes no
He's
chances
already
and
homered here
dives
in this one.
temporarily. U.S. submarine soon resurfaces, though, and strikes back. It spots a battleship. He sets up her target, then unleashes her torpedo.
And occasionally uses a cutter. Swing and a miss. No balls, 2 strikes.
The American torpedo misses its mark. But it's threatening enough that Arashi devotes the next few hours to stalking the submarine. This is a small encounter in a massive engagement, but the sub-hunt will have repercussions that will turn the tide of battle and determine the fate of the
With
fleet.
that kind of velocity, you'd prefer that pitcher work away.
On the ground, right
60
side.
miles west,
It's through for a hit.
the Japanese continue to Midway. But at mid-morning, Japanese scout planes report the presence of the American aircraft carriers.
Fly to right.
The Japanese fleet
First time.
immediately breaks from its southeasterly course and heads northeast toward the American warships.
Double play ball to second. Good feed. That's one. Over
But
the
the destroyer,
Arashi
stays behind to continue
And
hunting
welcome back to the
U.S.
ballpark.
submarine
Now the
Nautilus.
third baseman, Yoan Moncada. The other
With
way.
Arashi in the area, Nautilus will not come near the surface for fear that the destroyer will detect it
bottom of the
and
third
drop
inning.
depth charges.
So up next,
If the
Colson
submarine
Montgomery.
cannot come near the surface, it cannot
Brian
use its
Abreu
periscope
into
to
the
sight
game.
targets
And
and
I
take
can't
aim.
imagine any
So it
save
cannot
is an
fire
easy one.
torpedoes
You're holding a
effectively.
small lead on the scoreboard, and you know those hitters are going to give you the
In
best
changing
at-bats they
course,
can.
Japanese
So
carriers
it's
soon
always
steam
high
right in
stress.
its path
Let's
to
see what he's got
American
here to try and
torpedo
close it
bomber
out.
squadrons.
Headed towards the
The
corner.
torpedo bombers of USS Hornet spot
And a
enemy
foul ball.
carriers first.
A one-run lead. So the home team trying to pull it
15
out.
DVD Devastators roll in for the attack.
That's down and in. A slider
Most
missed.
of the lumbering airplanes do not even get close.
Swing and a miss. Stop them out. And they're
Swarming
down to
zero
their last
fighters
out.
and flak from enemy destroyers and battleships. Send them crashing into the briny water.
That's down and in. Next offering is in for a strike.
A single
Swing
pilot,
and a miss as he
George
chases
Gay,
that one darting
actually
out of the
gets
zone.
Devastator close enough to
Swing
drop
and a
his
high fly
2,000-pound
ball, well
torpedo.
struck. That's back there. And that'll do it.
As he approached the arm, then he released his torpedo, and then he was so close that he had to come up to go across the Japanese carrier. Just as he got over the Japanese carrier, his engine quit. So he splashed down on the other side. And he tried to get his gunner out, but he thought the gunner was dead because he had talked to him at one point, and then he never heard from him again.
Over the next few hours, George Gay will stay afloat using his life raft as camouflage, the sole survivor. 15 torpedo bombers and 29 men from the Hornet are all lost in a single attack. Ensign Gay is in the water less than 20 minutes when the torpedo bombers of USS Enterprise reach the battle area. As they drop close to the water to begin their attack, they too slammed ferocious anti-aircraft fire and attacks from zero fighters. Most go down. But 4 Enterprise torpedo bombers manage to escape the deadly barrage and will eventually make it back to the ship. Unfortunately, Tom Eversole, friend of SVD pilot Dusty Cleese, is not among the surviving air crewmen.
I always tried thinking about it. He was my, very, very best friend, and he didn't come back.
But at this point in the battle, Dusty Cleese has more things to worry about. Dusty is part of a dive bomber group well behind the torpedo planes. Heading up Dusty's air group is Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, a 40-year-old Buffalo, New York native. He normally flies a fighter, not a bomber, and he's leading this group like a bat out of hell.
He was a fighter pilot. His whole idea was, it's the one that hits first is the one that's going to win. So we were going at 190 knots.
Dauntless dive bombers usually fly at 160 knots. At 190 knots, they may run out of fuel before they can return. Also among McCluskey's air group is Bruno Guido. Back in February, Guido's quick action and heroism diverted disaster when a suicide bomber targeted Enterprise at the end of the Marshall Islands raid. Guido scrambled from his catwalk battle station to the machine gun in the rear seat of a Dauntless dive bomber parked on the flight deck. He opened fire on the Japanese suicide bomber, forcing it to crash. Also flying in the squadron is 19-year-old radio man gunner Don Hoff. He is still getting adjusted to life aboard the massive floating city called Enterprise. The enlisted men's quarters are deep in the bowels of the Big E. It's nearly 2,000 bunks, 4 deep, where Hoff got a rude awakening on his very first night.
My bunk was the bottom bunk, the one that's right on the floor. I was in there just in my shorts, and I woke up about midnight or so, and there was hot water that was splattering on me, splattering in my face, and it's hot on my chest, my stomach. Then I realized that I wasn't in a dream. I'm looking up there, and this guy is standing there urinating on me. He wasn't sleepwalking. He was one of the local squadron drunks. They pushed this guy, and he staggered on down there, still urinating. So that was my introduction. And I thought to myself, I wonder how long I'm going to be able to put up with this.
Now Hobb is in McCluskey's squadron, and they're in for a surprise. When McCluskey's bombers reach the point where the Japanese carriers are supposed to be, they see nothing but empty ocean.
We got out there, and the sun was shining, and there were a few scattered clouds around, but you could see for a long ways, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing in the water.
The dive bombers are unaware that the Japanese fleet has changed course toward the northeast, heading not for Midway, but for their real prey, Enterprise and her sister carriers. McCluskey faces a dilemma. If he keeps going, his squad will run out of fuel.
We were getting right about the end of where, if we have to continue to fly with a bomb load like this, we're going to have difficulty getting back. It was going to be close.
If he doesn't turn back soon, his men will probably have to ditch in the ocean with no guarantee of rescue. On the other hand, the enemy can't be too far away, and the damage his air group could do to those carriers might save a lot of American lives in the long run. McCluskey makes a gutsy choice. He keeps going, risking a crash landing for his entire crew, for a chance to find the enemy and destroy him. And the decision soon pays off. Within minutes, McCluskey spots a tiny white wake in the ocean below.
I saw McCluskey point out to the side, and I looked down there, and all I could see was what looked like a little tiny miniature ship down in the water.
It's the Japanese destroyer Arashi, the vessel that had been stalking the submarine Nautilus. It has given up its search and is now powering back to the fleet.
And that ship was not zigzagging, it was going at what they call flank speed, which means a big bunch of water coming up behind it. They were doing 35 knots or more, and he was heading straight.
McCluskey wisely decides that if I just follow this ship back, he'll probably take me back to the Japanese carrier task force.
McCluskey changes course and tails the Arashi. If the Enterprise flyers can keep from running out of gas, they may hit pay dirt. The Arashi points directly at the target. But before McCluskey gets there, another attack begins. The Japanese carriers are hit by bombers. Pilot Harry Coral and rear seat gunner Lloyd Childers buzz in with 13 other TVDs to drop their payloads. The Japanese Zeros intercept them in an instant. Zeros have a top speed of 330 miles per hour, a rate of climb of 3,100 feet per minute, two 20-millimeter cannons in the wings. To make this agile predator even more lethal, there are two 7.7-millimeter machine guns in the engine cowling.
The Zero comes head on. He came right in the real steep bank over us. So I wanted to get a burst in, but I pressed the trigger. Gun was still other Zeros in the area. And the best description was a bunch of bees attacking us.
Japanese Zero pilots are talented and disciplined flyers with years of experience. 21-year-old Lloyd Childers struggles to outgun some of the most skilled aerial warriors.
It's really difficult to figure out where to shoot. You're sitting backwards and you're trying to shoot a moving target from the moving target.
A gunner aims his weapon visually, using dead reckoning, without the aid of electronics. So he must lead the target, aim in front of it, like a hunter shooting a bird. The gunners and bombers are brave, but doomed. For the third time today, American torpedo planes begin to fall from the sky.
Harry Coral said, "Look at the skipper, look at the skipper." And I went around to look, and then I was looking right in the face of my boss, the chief radioman, and the plane was in flames. And I was looking at the chief's eyes. At first, his expression was, "What's going on?" Question mark. And then fear. He had figured it out. The airplane was burning furiously. Obviously flying very, very low. And then the skipper's airplane hit the water.
As a rear seat gunner, Childers is facing the back of the plane, so he can shoot at Zeros attacking from behind. The Japanese fighter planes normally swoop down from above, so he's scanning upward. But he soon gets a surprise from the opposite direction. degrees below Childers' aim. An enemy plane is closing in for the kill.
I looked down, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck.
In an instant, the enemy has climbed to Childers' level.
Here's a Zero, slowed down to 80 knots behind us, wobbling a little bit. He's out of ammo, and he's trying to cut our tail off with his prop.
Childers can't just open up wildly, because he'll shoot the stabilizers off his own plane. He takes careful aim through his machine gun's pipper, or sight.
I had the pipper below our horizontal stabilizer, and using the Japanese pilot's face as a target, I pushed the trigger, and he disappeared.
But Lloyd Childers' 21st birthday is far from over. Another wave of Zeros is coming at him.
So digging in,
I was
Carlos
shooting
Delgado.
at the attacking Zero when I felt that I was hitting the
Michaelis
leg.
back to work. Swinging
I
in the
thought it
middle.
was one bullet hit me, but
There's an
actually
opportunity to do some damage, but you've got to be selective. Make sure you get a pitch that you can handle.
Nice stop from his backside. There's one and
also was surprised because
what a play.
Moments later, Childers is hit yet again, this time just above the ankle of the other leg. This wound is painful, but the young man keeps up his fire at the end.
There's a swing and a drive. Back
The
there.
Yorktown torpedo bombers scored no hits. Most are shot down before they ever get close enough to drop their torpedoes. The score: the Japanese have shot down 25 planes. Americans, none. But the Yorktown's disastrous attack inadvertently brings a lucky turn of events for the Americans.
The Japanese fighters were focusing on an incoming torpedo plane attack from VT-3, Yorktown's torpedo squadron, and were forgetting to look around them to see if there were additional attacks coming in.
The Zeros have temporarily left the Japanese carriers without air cover. And at just that point, Wade McCluskey and his Enterprise dive bombers appear on the horizon, like the
On
cavalry
this
riding
board,
to the
that
attack.
would be a home run.
McCluskey has followed the Japanese destroyer Arashi directly to the big prize, the Japanese carrier fleet. This is the moment bomber pilot Dusty Cleese recognizes his target, the Kaga.
I can see these two great big ships, you
Here's
know.
Derek Jeter now with a runner in
closest to
scoring
us.
position.
And then a smaller one that was farthest away.
Down the line.
The
Nobody
Kaga.
can get there, and it's a foul ball.
Lieutenant Commander McCluskey immediately orders an attack, giving instructions for the air group to split in two, with one squadron attacking the Kaga and the other attacking the Akagi.
They stick forward and nosed over and looked down on the Japanese fleet. That would have been an incredible feeling.
Base hit center field. And they strike first as they take a 1-0 lead. Just
Boy,
kind of
that's the perfect
slice
place
that one
to
into
make an
center.
aiming spot on ships.
Heading into the wind helps a bomber and bomb stay on course. A crosswind can alter the trajectory of both. The air group begins its dive, but there's confusion initially. Everyone goes for the same ship at first, the Kaga.
We almost had some mid-air collisions because we had two squadrons that were both starting to try to dive on the same aircraft carrier.
Fortunately, one of the squadron commanders, Dick Best, alertly recognizes
Go
the
ahead,
error
run on
and breaks
base.
off with two other planes to attack the Akagi.
0 for 2 in this one.
At the same time,
Crushed.
back
Left
with the
center
main
field.
bomber
This
group
one's
diving for the
deep.
Kaga.
Forget it.
Confusion confusion has caused the pilot of Donald Hoff's plane, James Dexter, to dive his bomber at a much steeper angle than he'd intended.
Rather than angling straight down in a 70 or 80 degree dive, he ended up over on his back, so he was over 90 degrees.
That's what we
Hoff is
call a
pinned to a
critical
seat,
success.
diving backward at more than 90 degrees when his ammunition belts begin to fall out of the plane.
They started to come out of the can like a big old snake. And I couldn't do anything with the guns to hang on to it, because you don't want to have 1,000 ammunition belt hanging out the back of the plane as you're diving. This could be a disaster.
Hoff's pilot drops his bombs and pulls up steeply, bringing the ammo belts back into the plane. Unfortunately, the pilot's bomb has missed. Next in line is pilot Lewis Hopkins. The Georgian native is only 23 years old, but he dives as steeply as the rest of them, 13,000 feet straight down.
It takes about 22 seconds to go altitude to drop one. In that period of time, the 3 or 4 planes in the same dive. So you can see the dives and you can see the bombs where they were falling. Normally you drop at 1,500 feet. I think everybody went right down to 1,500 feet.
Radio Met gunners like 25-year-old Los Angeles native Ed Anderson experienced the dive facing backward.
Pretty fast. You're pulling out a hard pull out. And when you pull out, you're just...
Yeah, the better at fucking Minute Maid in the day sucks ass.
I was lucky these 2 wingmen dropped their bomb. They missed. And then Earl Gallagher was the next one. It hit directly about like 200 feet from the stern.
Dude, I can't piece up a ball better than that.
The first fighter plane taken off. Now this 500-pounder landed smack right on top of it, and it exploded.
Next, it is Dustin Cleese's turn, and he's willing to risk his life to hit the target.
I aimed at the big red circle at the front. Now, of course, you don't aim where it is, you aim where it's going to be. I wanted to make sure I was going to hit, so I only pulled out that thing, at 1,000 feet. 19 pull out to just barely miss hitting the ocean. It hit just the rear rim of that big red circle. This thing went way down below deck.
James Dexter and Don Hoff also pull out very close to the water.
I was looking right at the side of the ship, and of course there were other planes that had hit with bombs and explosions, and there was smoke and fire. And about that time, he made a real sharp turn to his left.
Dexter has pulled the sharp left to avoid a Japanese cruiser up ahead.
What they started doing, they started jinking, which means that they made a series of movements like this here, trying to make it a very difficult target for that cruiser to hit.
But Dexter and Hoff soon confront a new threat.
Suddenly, in front of us, are these big columns of water that are exploding, coming up in front of us. And, of course, he's zigzagging, and we start zigzagging to get our jinxing again.
The enemy cruiser is firing shells out in front of the retreating planes to alert Zeros overhead to their presence. The columns of water caused by the explosions are deadly obstacles.
And if you're not watching it, you fly into a column of water, and it's just like flying into concrete. About that time, one of those shells hit in the water right below us, and it exploded, and it lifted us right straight up in the air about 50 feet.
Even so, Dexter and Hoff managed to escape unscathed. The other pilots also make it clear without serious mishap. USS Enterprise is still 150 miles ahead.
So runners at the corners, nobody out. And next will be the cleanup hitter.
Now the question.
Lined, and that's a base hit. Run scores easily, and it's 1-0. Runner stops at third, and they're at the corners.
And there's one more Japanese carrier still out there, preparing for an attack. June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway. Enterprise's first attack on the Japanese fleet is breathtaking. The outnumbered flyers of Enterprise have wreaked havoc on the Imperial aircraft carriers.
And here is Jake McCarthy. Donaldson back to work. Swing and a miss at a slider. Inside just missed.
Almost instantaneously with a
On the ground left side, 6. Safe at first as they can't make the play. Randall Grichuk now.
Catastrophic fires.
That one the other way. Off balance feed, there's one. Safe at first.
Yep. Back-to-back challenges failed.
Bombers are tearing up these two. A third carrier, Soryu, some 5 miles northeast, has also fallen victim to the strike. Dive bombers from USS Yorktown have ravaged her.